It was a quiet evening in a small-town diner, the kind of place where everyone knew each other. The smell of fresh coffee filled the air, and the soft hum of conversation made it feel warm and welcoming. At a corner table, an older man sat alone, stirring his coffee slowly. His face was weathered, marked by time and experience. He wore a simple jacket with a small American flag patch on the sleeve. His hands, rough and scarred, trembled slightly as he lifted his cup. There was a quiet dignity about him, a presence that spoke of years spent in service. His eyes, though weary, still held a sharpness, a depth that suggested he had seen things most would never understand. A group of off-duty police officers sat a few tables away, laughing loudly. They had been swapping stories about their tough days on the job when one of them noticed the old man. "Look at this guy," one officer chuckled. "Bet he's one of those washed-up vets who think they're still in the fight." Another officer smirked. "Probably tells war stories to anyone who'll listen." They didn't mean harm. Not really. But their words carried a sharp edge. They spoke just loud enough for the man to hear. He didn't react. He just kept stirring his coffee, staring at the dark liquid as if lost in thought. His mind drifted back to a different time, a different place, where laughter was rare and every day was a battle for survival. He remembered the weight of his rifle, the sting of exhaustion, and the deafening roar of helicopters above his head. A young waitress who had been refilling coffee cups overheard the officers and frowned. She knew the old man well. He came in every evening, ordered the same meal, and left a generous tip, even though he never had much to say. As she walked past their table, she muttered, "You might want to be careful who you're laughing at." One of the officers raised an eyebrow. "Oh yeah, and why's that?" The waitress just shook her head and walked away. But moments later, something caught their eye. Near the counter, right next to the register, was a framed photo and a small folded American flag in a glass case. The photo showed a much younger version of the old man, standing tall in a military uniform, surrounded by his unit. His eyes in the photo held the same quiet intensity, but there was something else: pride, a sense of purpose. One officer got up and took a closer look. His face changed as he read the plaque below the picture. "Colonel James Reynolds, Silver Star recipient, Vietnam War hero." The room seemed to get quieter. The officers looked at each other, then back at the man sitting alone. The reality of their mistake hit them all at once. A heavy sense of guilt settled over them. The man they had mocked wasn't just another old veteran. He was a hero, a soldier who had sacrificed more than they could ever understand. One of them, the same officer who had laughed the loudest, stood up and slowly approached the veteran's table. "Sir," he said softly, I just wanted to say I didn't realize." He hesitated, then took a deep breath. "Thank you for your service." The old man finally looked up. His eyes, filled with both pain and wisdom, studied the officer for a moment. Then he gave a small nod. "Take care of each other out there," he said simply. His voice was steady but carried the weight of years of loss and experience. The officer nodded back, feeling a lump in his throat. The rest of the group, now silent, watched as the veteran slowly stood, left a tip on the table, and walked out into the night. They sat there in silence, the weight of the moment sinking in. None of them touched their drinks. They had come into the diner as men who thought they understood duty, but tonight they had met a man who lived it. That evening, the officers learned a lesson they would never forget. Some heroes don't boast about their past. They don't need to. Their actions speak louder than any words ever could. And sometimes, respect isn't about what you say, it's about you don't. Long after the veteran had gone, the officers remained at their table, deep in thought. The laughter had faded, replaced by a heavy silence. One by one, they finished their meals, paid their bills, and left the diner with a newfound respect for those who had come before them. As they stepped outside into the crisp night air, the youngest officer among them glanced back at the diner, his heart heavy with regret. He made a silent promise to himself, to never again judge a book by its cover, and to always remember that true bravery isn't loud or boastful. It's quiet, steady, and unshakable.